Hello, and thank you for tuning into the Stuff I Heard podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Peak, and we are very close to the big game, as they say on the radio, because apparently you get in trouble if you say something about the Super Bowl. Somebody has the rights to the Super Bowl or some crap like that. Anyway, so those who don't know, Kansas City Chiefs are playing the Eagles tomorrow, and it's going to be big. So cool, good for them, glad for them. Um, I don't know. I'm one of those people that has never really like sided with a team being my team. It's so weird to like claim a team as your favorite team. And I'm a little bit jealous of people who do. Um, I know this sounds kind of weird, right? But like automatically it takes some of your choices out of your daily routine. Like if you're asked questions about what you're into or what you like. I mean, I work with a guy who's big time into the Eagles. So he's like, every time you ask him, so what you doing? Oh, I'm gonna get ready to go to an Eagles game, man. Me and the wife we saved up. We're gonna go on a trip up to Philly. We're gonna watch the game. It's gonna be great. We're gonna have fun. Eagles, 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 Eagles. Oh, we got team day coming up. What you gonna wear? Oh, I know. I got this one jersey that's kind of a throwback jersey. It's what, you know, it's just like it answers a lot of the little questions of things that you don't know what to do. I always think back to the Will Ferrell sketch where he's jumping up and down and going, I don't know what to do with my hands. And I sort of have that existential feeling a lot of times of like, I don't know, when you're busy, you always know what to do with your hands, right? And so I've heard people who have entered into retirement say something to the nature of, yeah, I used to think that I'd work hard and eventually I'd have my own time and I could do whatever I want. And once I have my own time, I can do with, I can do the things I've been wanting to do, just haven't had the time. And then they get to that point, and sometimes their health is to a situation where they can't physically do the things they wanted to do, and so they're sitting around going, I can't do anything." And so it's a moment of going, "Yeah, what? I can't even do anything with my hands if I wanted to." But if you had that kind of fandom, and if you were into your team, then every year, come around football or baseball or hockey or whatever it is, whatever your team is, you always have some kind of choices that are a little socially easier to navigate in ways. Um, maybe. I say maybe because there are people that let their fandom take over their lives. I know people who are big time into certain teams. I'm not going to say any names because it polarizes people. But let's just say that some people I know are into their favorite team so much so that they will dictate their lives around what happens with their team, whether or not they enjoy their times with their families or their kids, or if they go on a trip, they can't do it until their team plays. And if their team loses, they don't want to go on the trip then because they're in a bad mood. They don't play on the team. That's the whole thing. It's not their team. I mean, it's good to have that fandom. And again, we talk about the whole community thing and how it's fun to get around the thing and inspire each other. And it's fun to joke and tease and that sort of thing about, oh yeah, your team's not looking too good this year. And that's fun. I like that kind of banter. Um, but it also in a way becomes detrimental to relationships. Uh, there's I guess, a small version of that between science fiction communities who are, let's say that, I don't know, you're into Star Wars. I don't know anybody like that. Personally, nobody, nobody that's wearing a Star Wars T-shirt or has a Boba Fett poster behind him or anything like that, lightsabers around him and Lego made of, Razor Crest and Millennium Falcon and Slave One. Nobody that I know. But let's just say that somebody's big time into Star Wars and then somebody else comes along and they're like, Star Wars ain't nothing, man. Star Trek's the best. Okay, listen, I picked a team. I guess my team is Star Wars. Um, and if you like Star Trek, that's fine. I like Star Trek too. I don't own any Star Trek stuff. I like watching the movies. I like watching TV shows. I haven't watched the expanded universes of the Voyager and the whatever. I mean, there's a bunch of iterations of it because they've tried to do what Star Wars has done, and in some ways have done it a little better, but also just not what I chose to follow, not the path I chose to get invested in. This is the one I chose to get invested in. This is the one I like. This is the one that me and my friends geek out about and talk about. And I make friends by using my credit card sometimes because it used to have a Darth Vader on it. and a random person goes, "Hey man, take the card," and we became buddies instantly. And you know, just it's the little things, right? So, anywho, good luck to both teams. I look forward to watching it because I want to see a good game. My work schedule may dictate whether or not I get to watch all of it, but we'll see what happens. You know, there's always stuff that comes up, right? Then you got to do the responsible thing. So moving forward, choo choo. I have been, this is the stuff I heard podcast. So I have been listening to some things. I've been listening to a couple of the Confused Breakfast podcasts. Really enjoyed going back in the catalog and diving deep into one of my favorite movies as a kid, the Ghostbusters, the first Ghostbusters movie. This was out in 1984. I had to do the, real quick math. I'm going, holy crap, I was 10 years old then. Okay, cool. That was a good age to watch Ghostbusters because I had forgotten a lot about Ghostbusters. I haven't seen Ghostbusters in a very long time. Probably 20 or 30 years now. It's been a while. It's been a while. We are almost 40 years since this movie came out. When it came out, though, I remember, first of all, being scared in the beginning because I don't know if you remember how the movie starts, but they're following this lady. She's going into a library and she happens upon a creepy ghost that's there, but they don't show you the ghost. They just show this woman reacting to seeing the ghost and the ghost chasing her and her being afraid. And right away, watching it as a 10-year-old boy, 11-year-old boy at the time, whichever it was, I don't remember going to the movies to see it, but I remember seeing it a lot at home. I think we recorded it off of the TV with a VHS tape back when VCRs were the thing. Some of you may know when that is, but I recorded it and I watched it over and over and over and over and over and over and over. I watched it so much that I think I broke the tape at one point. Um, but yeah, I love this movie. I love the simple comedy of it. I love the danger of it. I love the science fiction portion of it. I loved the cast. The cast was amazing. I mean, you're talking about a bunch of television comedic geniuses. Harold Ramis, Bill Murray, Rick Moranis, Dan Aykroyd, Annie Potts, Sigourney Weaver, Ernie Hudson. Just a star-studded cast of people that were really hitting it out of the park at the time. Sigourney Weaver had just done Aliens, and so she was like prime time science fiction woman. And when she went into this role, this was a sort of science fictiony comedy kind of show, but it had to do with the paranormal. And honestly, she was one of the biggest stars that could have been on the show. And I didn't learn this until I listened to the Confused Breakfast Boys, but they were talking about how she landed the role. Basically, she committed to going into the audition and jumping on the table and barking like a dog, and pretending to be the dog that she turns into whenever Zool is there, because she's Dana Barrett on the thing, and there is no Dana, there is only Zool, which is my buddy Greg's favorite line. There is no Dana, there is only Zool. I love that. I didn't know what Zool was, but listening to the Confused Breakfast Boys, I learned that it was actually a real thing that was talked about in an exorcism that was done from some creepy little girl that talked about seeing the great Gozer god Zool. And it's been in history books before, and it's ancient Sumerian, and listen, it has everything that I want out of a movie. It's creepy, it's neat, it's future, it was everything that I had hoped for. Plus, it had a lot of comedy in it. I mean, who doesn't love lines by Dan Aykroyd going, "Listen, you smell that?" I mean, what did you do, Ray? What is it? It's the Stay Fresh Marshmallow Man. I mean, come on. I love that kind of stuff. Um, just, just there's a lot of simple comedy between them of things they say that's just funny, just really smart, funny stuff. And Rick Moranis is the perfect crazy neighbor that, is always getting locked out of his apartment. And there's a neat little fiction side piece that goes along with that the Confused Breakfast Boys talk about. And listen, if you're going to go back and start listening to Confused Breakfast, I want to say this right now. Start with the Ghostbusters episode. It is really good. Okay, so I'm not gonna keep gushing about that, but it was really good, guys. Loved it. I loved every one of your takes. I want to talk to you about it. Oh, I gotta become a Patreon member so I can have some back and forth with you guys. Like, but right now I'm a little strapped, a little bit strapped. So moving on from Ghostbusters, the very next episode that they did was on the Running Man. This was, I don't know if you guys remember this. This movie came out in '87. Had Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold was famous for doing a lot of one-line kind of taglines in movies. In the Terminator, the "I'll be back," and stuff like that. Um, this was chocked full of one-liners, real goofy, science fictiony kind of show. They were supposed to be depicting the year 19 or 2019. This was in uh, '87. So they were thinking that it was going to be like the future. I didn't find out till later, listening to this podcast, The Confused Breakfast Boys, that this was written by Stephen King. He actually wrote it under an alias. Apparently, he used to get really, really high on cocaine and write crazy stories, and he'd later read them and go, "I'm not putting that under my name." So he would use a pseudonym and put out these books, and then they got wildly popular because if you go back and watch it now, you go, "Oh yeah, definitely cocaine was involved in the writing of this story." But if you watch it, it is interesting how the stylizing choices of what they thought the future would look like was still as 80s as you could be. Still a lot of spandex and lycra, and um, even the Confused Breakfast Boys point out at one point the guy's in a limo, but it just looks like a regular limo with some stuff taped onto it. Uh, I remember watching this movie back in the day and thinking, wait, there's all kind of flaws with this. How come the Central Command Center is in the center of this thing where all these bad guys are supposed to be, and these guys are sent into this park to be victims of these warriors, these gladiators, and they're jettisoned in this tube-like thing that looks like it's super dangerous, and yet somehow they'll call so and so to the set and he's just there. Like, do they have to go through the tubes? And there's all kinds of questions that I had that the Confused Breakfast guys watch and point out, and they don't miss a single thing for us to laugh at. Um, it is absolutely hilarious. I think they hit the nail on the head with everybody. And who doesn't love an overactor like Jesse the Body Ventura, and how he leaves the show and like it's never spoke about? How the character Ben Richards, Arnold Schwarzenegger's character, is supposed to have a brother, and then it's never talked about again. Like he's supposed to be in the game to find his brother, and not once did they talk about it once they move on. Uh, and about how we can buy into the fact that Arnold Schwarzenegger could be the Terminator, or he could be a kindergarten cop, or he could be pregnant. But to buy him as a helicopter pilot, you're like, all right, right away, I'm just no, I'm out. This is great. I laughed the entire episode listening to this. I was happy that I listened to it the way I did too, because I had it like set to where it would go on every time I was in my vehicle. And so, like leaving the house to go to work or coming home from work, or if I had to run any errands, it was on. And I would just find myself laughing all week long. So, great podcast, guys. Loving it. Love what you're doing. Um, I am sort of skipping around this week. I just started listening to the Coming to America episode, which is kind of a newer episode. And yeah, so I'll be doing that one next week. All right, let's move on to some stuff I've seen because there's been a lot of good TV on. Okay. First, I want to talk about The Last of Us. On The Last of Us, which is a huge hit right now for HBO, Pedro Pascal, of course, is like the video game, heading west with this young girl. Joel and Ellie are a pair connected through a harsh world they live in, forced to endure the brutal circumstances of a ruthless killers on a trek across the post-outbreak America. Um, so episodes 4 and 5. Now, 4 came out on Sunday, which is when they normally come out. Last Sunday night, I watched it Monday morning, and then episode 5 came out last night on a Friday. Because of the Super Bowl, they decided to release it a little bit early, so I was able to watch both. Um, And I know that's taken away from my enjoyment of watching it next week, but I get the fact they wanted viewers to be able to watch it so they could talk about it, so that I'm sure that during the Super Bowl, people could be like, oh, yeah, Super Bowl. Oh, no, I got to watch The Last of Us. No, they can just have a party and then be done, and it won't hurt their numbers and that sort of thing, which I guess is a HBO decision, right? Now, one of the things that I've really enjoyed about HBO, especially since Game of Thrones, is that on these bigger shows, they have a post credits session where they talk about the episode with the director and the producers and some of the actors. And they talk about what the characters are going through and the things that they don't really say in the episode, but they sort of spell out for you a little differently about how the character is developing and the things that they're going through, which is good. I talked about how episode three, a long, long time, uh, was really a beautiful episode that could have been its own movie. Um, this interesting relationship between Bill and Frank and their passing was just really well done. Episode four, Please Hold My Hand, is the two out on a journey and they're headed out west and they get to Kansas City and things go awry pretty quickly. And suddenly they're running for their lives and they have to abandon their vehicle. And there is a whole city of people coming after them. And in that episode, we see this woman who immediately I recognize as from Two and a Half Men, Rose, the crazy stalker neighbor that would always come after Charlie. I saw her and immediately like, it's Rose. She has an interesting character in this show, and episode five continues with her chasing after. Um, she keeps yelling out, "Henry, Henry, Henry! I'm after Henry! Find Henry! Get Henry!" Okay, so we find out in the episode that Henry is responsible for her brother passing away, and that's why she's after Henry. But the story moves along, and the spoiler alert, if you don't know yet, Joel and Ellie escape, and they're now headed west again by themselves. So there's teasers of next week where they finally meet up. Joel finally finds his brother out west somewhere, and I know this is like a little anticlimactic because if you think about it, this show's gotta be, I'm just guessing, I don't know for sure, but this show's gotta be 10 episodes. That's episode six. So in a story arc, you always expect a setup, a climax, and then you land the plane, right? We haven't gotten to the climax yet. Even though each one of these episodes has the setup, the climax, and you land the plane over and over and over again, I think all of this is just setup so far. I think the climax is going to be episode eight, nine. So we're still setting up the big thing, whatever the big thing is. There's something big that's coming. We're seeing that right now on another show that I'm watching, The Bad Batch on Disney Channel. It's an animated show, Star Wars. Go figure. That guy, that guy, he watches The Bad Batch. So Star Wars had a double episode week this past Wednesday. They had two episodes, seven and eight. Now, from what I hear, this is going to be a really big season with, I don't know, I think 20 episodes, 22 episodes, something like that. So seven and eight were a double episode, and they did that for a reason. Um, no one has said out loud what the reason is, but I'm just going to tell you what I think the reason is. Episode seven and episode eight basically spell out to all of the new fans and all of the casual fans of what the difference is between clone troopers and stormtroopers. They've done this in different versions. They've hinted around to it. They've sort of skated around it in an outline of sorts in different shows and different movies. Um, but basically, the clones were grown and trained and raised to be really, really proficient in their job. Now, they were all created, as we all learn, by the Emperor, by Palpatine, Senator Palpatine, if you will, Grand Emperor Palpatine, the Emperor Palpatine. So he created them. He also created the Separatists with the droid armies to fight each other so that he could arrange for the Jedi to be killed by the clones. It was all just to cause war, to create an army, to undermine the Jedi's authority, to then have them killed by the clones with Order 66, which is the little chip in their brain that makes them say, must follow orders, must kill the Jedi are treasonous. The Emperor gave us the order, we have to kill him. And so they went after him. Okay. Then you get the Bad Batch who've had chips malfunction or their chips removed, and they didn't listen to the order and they're on their own path. Um, the clones were grown to be accelerated growth, which means they also are going to die quickly. Okay. There's not a huge life expectancy for the clones, even as they are. The only ones that were not transformed in some way was Boba Fett and Omega. They are the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. And Omega is with the Bad Batch group now. We're getting to see her grow up and we're getting to see her learn the stuff. And so, in a way, Omega is the vehicle in which we are viewing things because she asks questions oftentimes. Being a young person, being a kid, not knowing the answers, she'll ask the questions out loud and then has explained it for us, the viewer. Okay. They're spoon feeding everyone the transition of how this was all a huge setup so that the clones were seen as the reason for the downfall of the Jedi. And Palpatine had engineered it in such a way that it was all pointing fingers towards one admiral. And they had him removed and possibly killed in this great Senate hearing. And it was all to push forward with the recruitment of regular people to serve in their military in the Empire. The idea was is that if they do that, then they have people from every sector defending their own sectors, and they're seen as, oh, I get this cool government job, I get to protect my people, I'm protected with a good job and good benefits and all this other stuff. And meanwhile, like you don't get the same type of person, you don't get the same type of recruit because they had regular lives and then they joined the military, and so you're going to get a wide range of experience and abilities and stuff like that, which is why in a lot of the Star Wars movies, whenever the stormtroopers are shooting, they're always missing because they're not very accurate. And also, are their hearts really in it? Because in a way, they're fighting against their own people at times. So maybe they're missing on purpose. Maybe they're scared. Maybe they're just their whole mentality and their abilities are different than clone troopers. So there's times where I put up, artwork things of stormtroopers or clone troopers, and people are always like, aren't they the same thing? No. The short answer is no. And if you want to see the difference, watch these two episodes, get some information. It's out there. It's pretty simple. So just they're helping. They're helping. I look at it like this. George Lucas and Dave Filoni came up with a masterpiece, and it's like a poem, okay? Much like the Bible, okay? And then they're like, okay, now we're going to explain to you all the little parts in ways that you can all discuss it and interact with it and come up with your own theories and your own ideas, and maybe, I don't know, have a fandom that buys merch along the way and and helps us continue the story because it's supposed to live longer than we live. Yeah, I don't know. That's either real or I just made it up. So anyway, um, yeah, go check out The Bad Batch on Disney Plus. It's pretty great. Um, okay, let's talk about a movie. All right, so this is the Stuff I Heard podcast, and I had heard that this movie, All Quiet on the Western Front, had won a bunch of awards, and I was like, okay, well, what is it? And I clicked on it on Netflix. I had some free time, and I was not expecting what I saw. This is a German movie. It's been redone. Apparently, the movie idea has been redone. This is the third iteration of it. Um, It is basically the story of a young German boy who grows up with a very influential group of friends and a charismatic professor at school who encourages them to join the Imperial German Army. And immediately they are sent to the Western front lines. For those who don't know, that is France. In World War One. So in World War One, trench warfare was beginning, and chemical warfare was becoming a thing, and tanks were being used heavily. And this is it's a very brutal, very realistic view of how young men are convinced to fight a war for their country and are immediately met with the realization of what that means. This movie is about 2.5 hours long, and it doesn't end well. Spoiler alert. It shows you all of the atrocities of war, including the Treaty of Versailles that was signed in Paris that basically made conditions for the German people so bad that they had no choice but to go to war again in World War II. But it was also a reaction to the fact that this country had just decided to wage war on people just because. I mean, because one leader was like, "We need to do it. Let's go after him. Get him." I mean, so I had to Google it because it showed a stat at the end of the movie that said something like, 17 million people had perished during World War One. And so I Googled it, and it actually was more like 20 million deaths, according to Google. 20 million deaths, 21 million wounded. The number includes 9.7 military and 10 million civilians. So more civilians died than military. The Allies lost 5.7 million, and the central powers lost 4 million. So this movie was it was difficult to watch at times. You see these guys talk about how difficult it will be for them to go home after seeing some of the things that they've seen. You see them starving to death because they were not given enough food. Um, there was no plan for how to advance forward. Um, they fought for years to only move their line about 3 meters total. They would fight for land and lose the land and get the land back and lose the land. The trench warfares that they were fighting never really got them anything other than death, a lot of death. It's amazing how many lives were lost due to the pursuits and persuasions of men of power to satisfy their own needs, and how influential young people can be to throw caution at the wind with their own lives because of the charisma of some people. I don't know. It was hard to watch. It was hard to watch. Um, I don't know what awards they got. I'm not going to look it up right now, but they deserved whatever they got. It was well done. Um, yeah. So a little bit good. Okay, we got some happy stuff. We got some Ghostbusters, some Running Man. Uh, we got some current day stuff. The Last of Us and The Bad Batch. and then we went dark, where the all's quiet on the Western Front. Yeah, so a little bit of everything, and yeah, I've had some really good conversations this week with people, discussing our ideas about the world and about how things are going, and about our hopes and dreams and fears and all that fun stuff. And I guess my point of all this is that I think we're doing okay. I, for whatever reason, am still an optimist in that we are connecting with one another, and we are doing the little things, and the little things do matter. If you get a chance, go on my dad's YouTube page, RPEEK, and you'll get to see me and him playing around with the hot rods. And um, he is, I know because of Facebook, putting that engine that he rebuilt into the Rambler. So that'll be fun to watch that thing haul boogie. That little secretary car is going to be burning rubber here before long. Yeah. So good stuff there. I'm also really digging the Matt's Off-Road Recovery. They're almost done building the heavy wrecker. Itchy Boots is getting ready to start her next adventure. She announced it on Facebook that she's already doing it, but she's delaying putting anything on YouTube. That way people can't track her down and harass her and that kind of thing, which I totally understand. I mean, she's doing all this by herself on a motorcycle. So if you get a chance to check Itchy Boots out on YouTube, go check that out too. That's pretty fantastic. That's better than most TV. It's pretty amazing what she can do, all by herself in the world on a motorcycle. So I'm gonna wrap this up. Thank you to everybody who listens. Thank you to everybody who pays attention and comments and gives me feedback and all that fun stuff. And I don't know, maybe I should start a thing where I read off people's names that comment on stuff. And I mean, it's weird to have to go back now, but yeah, maybe I could do it now. Yeah. So yeah, thank you. And hey, if you want to be part of this, let me know. We can talk about it. We could talk about your favorite team winning the Super Bowl or not winning the Super Bowl, or why they're your favorite team. What would happen if your favorite team won, but you were also supposed to, you know, you got tickets to the game, but you also were supposed to go to a family function. Which did you choose? Do you think you chose wisely? You know, all of it. I want to talk about all of it. I think the more we talk about that kind of stuff, the more normalized we can make everybody's weird obsessions and habits and all that stuff. Yeah. So thank you again. And tune in next time. I always end this by saying, cue the cow. Moo, baby.
So I want you guys to give me more likes. Give me more likes!